He stood motionless in the freezing rain for hours, his lips turning blue, soaked to the bone, while palace officials insisted tradition must be upheld. But when Princess Charlotte saw him, she stepped forward, holding an umbrella, and invoked a forgotten royal protocol that changed everything. So what was this centuries-old tradition? And how did a 9-year-old princess know it by heart? Before we reveal what happened next, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The rain fell in relentless sheets across London, transforming the ornate grounds of Buckingham Palace into glistening pools that reflected the darkened sky. Yet, amidst this aquatic assault, stood Sergeant Euan Katarik of the Queen's Guard, a scarlet figure unmoved by the elements that had scattered tourists in every direction. His bearskin cap, normally an impressive display of military tradition, now served as a reluctant reservoir, channeling rivulets down his already saturated uniform. Weather services had issued amber warnings across the capital. Flash flooding was expected, wind gusts reaching 40 anners meritis, and temperatures dropping to unseasonable lows. Palace officials had quietly modified some ceremonial activities, but the guards remained at their posts, sentinels against not just potential threats, but against the compromise of centuries-old tradition. Sergeant Katarik's eyes remained fixed forward, his expression revealing nothing of the cold that had penetrated every layer of his uniform. The ceremonial rifle in his white-gloved hands remained perfectly positioned, the metal now slick and cold against his increasingly numb fingers. "Look at him standing there still as a statue," whispered a woman to her companion as they hurried past. "I can't believe they make them stay out in this." "Dedication," her companion replied with respectful admiration. "You wouldn't catch me standing still for 5 minutes in this downpour, let alone hours." In his mind, Katarik compared the current conditions to the monsoon season he'd endured during deployment in Southeast Asia. At least then, movement had been possible, shelter eventually available. Today, his duty demanded perfect stillness, perfect composure, regardless of nature's assault. A crack of thunder caused several remaining tourists to flinch, but Katarik remained motionless. The marble beneath his boots had become treacherous with rain, requiring subtle adjustments in muscle tension to maintain his perfect posture. These micro-corrections happened automatically after years of training, invisible to observers, but demanding significant physical control. From beneath the shelter of the palace colonnade, a small cluster of visitors had formed, their phones occasionally rising to capture images of the solitary guard standing firm against the elements. Among them, an elderly man with military bearing observed with particular intensity, occasionally nodding with understanding that suggested personal experience with such duty. Sergeant Euan Katarik had served 12 distinguished years in Her Majesty's Armed Forces before his current posting to the Queen's Guard. 2 tours in Afghanistan, specialized training with NATO forces, and a peacekeeping deployment with the United Nations had forged both his reputation and his character. The scar beneath his uniform, a reminder of shrapnel wounds sustained in South Sudan, occasionally tightened in cold weather, and today it made its presence known with particular insistence. The Katarik men had stood guard for 3 generations. His grandfather had maintained his position during the Great London Fog of 1952, when visibility dropped to inches. His father had stood watch through the bitter winter of 1971, when temperatures plummeted and water froze in canteens. Now, Euan continued this lineage of service, adding his own chapter to the family's proud tradition of unwavering duty. As the rain continued its assault, Katarik employed subtle techniques developed through years of ceremonial duty. The almost imperceptible shifting of weight from heel to toe prevented his feet from becoming completely numb. The careful management of each breath helped regulate his core temperature despite his soaked uniform. His eyes fixed on a specific stone in the palace facade, creating a mental anchor that helped him disassociate from physical sensation. 6 months earlier, a routine patrol near Juba had ended with an unexpected explosion and a medical evacuation. The shoulder injury had healed, well enough for his return to active duty, but not without leaving its mark. The palace doctor had expressed concern about prolonged exposure to cold and damp conditions, suggesting modified duties during inclement weather. Katarik had politely declined. "Weather's just weather," he had told his sister during a rare phone call last week. "South Sudan taught me what real discomfort means." Now, as lightning briefly illuminated the palace grounds, Katarik recalled his personal motto: "Discomfort passes, dignity remains." It was a phrase his grandfather had shared, attributed to some long-forgotten sergeant major, but it had become Katarik's touchstone through difficult moments. The weight of his sodden uniform had increased markedly since taking his post 2 hours earlier. The scarlet tunic, designed more for ceremonial splendor than practical protection, now clung heavily to his frame. Water had penetrated collar and cuffs, creating a persistent chill that worked its way steadily inward. Dr. Margaret Ashbury had planned today's historical walking tour of London carefully, but the weather had forced significant modifications to her itinerary. As the history professor shepherded her university students beneath the inadequate shelter of a nearby archway, her gaze repeatedly returned to the solitary guard standing in the downpour. "We should move on to Westminster Abbey," suggested her teaching assistant. "They've opened the cloisters early because of the storm." In a moment, Dr. Ashbury replied, her academic interest in royal tradition suddenly overshadowed by more immediate concerns. "That guard has been standing there without relief for nearly 2 hours now." Lightning flashed dramatically across the London skyline, followed by a crack of thunder that suggested dangerous proximity. Several of her students jumped at the sound, huddling closer together beneath shared umbrellas as the rain intensified. "This isn't mere rain anymore," Dr. Ashbury muttered, noting how the guard's scarlet uniform had darkened to burgundy with saturation. "It's becoming dangerous." A practical woman by nature, Dr. Ashbury had always balanced her appreciation for historical tradition with modern sensibilities. Her academic career studying British royal customs had given her deep respect for the ceremonial aspects of monarchy. But her humanitarian instincts now overrode scholarly detachment. The barely perceptible tremor in the guard's white-gloved hands suggested the beginning stages of hypothermia. Decision made. She turned to her students. "Wait here. I'm going to speak with someone about this situation." Dr. Ashbury approached a palace staff member who stood beneath a black umbrella near the visitor's entrance. "Excuse me?" she began, her professional tone masking her growing worry. "I'm Dr. Margaret Ashbury, history professor at King's College. I'm concerned about the guard stationed at the East Post. He's been exposed to these conditions for an extended period." The staff member offered a polite but practiced smile. "The Queen's Guard operates under specific protocols, madam. They're well trained for all weather conditions." I understand tradition, perhaps better than most, Dr. Ashbury persisted. But surely there are provisions for extreme weather. The Met Office has upgraded this to a severe weather warning. I assure you, the welfare of all palace personnel is carefully monitored, came the measured response. The ceremonial duties of the Queen's Guard are governed by regulations dating back centuries. As they spoke, Dr. Ashbury noticed Sergeant Katarik's shoulders tensing against an involuntary shiver, a brief lapse in perfect control that spoke volumes about his deteriorating condition. Regulations dating back centuries didn't account for climate change or modern understanding of hypothermia, Dr. Ashbury countered. That man is showing signs of extreme cold stress. The rotation schedule is determined by the captain of the guard, the staff member replied with finality. The traditions of the Queen's Guard are maintained regardless of weather. Dr. Ashbury returned to her waiting students, frustration evident in her usually composed features. Historical significance and ceremonial importance aside, the practical reality of a human being standing motionless in near-freezing rain struck her as unnecessarily rigid adherence to tradition. "Is he going to be okay?" asked one of her students, a young woman who had been watching the guard with increasing concern. "Apparently tradition trumps welfare," Dr. Ashbury replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. As she spoke, she noticed the guard's face had paled significantly, his lips taking on a bluish tinge visible even from a distance. Making a sudden decision, she unfolded her own umbrella and moved purposefully toward the ceremonial barrier. "Dr. Ashbury, what are you doing?" called one of her students, alarmed by this unexpected deviation from their professor's usually proper behavior. "Something practical," she responded without slowing her pace. Several palace security personnel noticed her determined approach, their postures shifting from routine vigilance to focused attention. A uniformed officer stepped forward as she neared the barrier. "Madam, this area is restricted. Please remain behind the designated line." Dr. Ashbury stopped precisely at the barrier, her academic authority evident in both posture and tone. "I understand protocol, officer, but that guard is showing clear signs of hypothermia. His condition has deteriorated significantly in just the past 20 minutes. The Queen's Guard operates under specific ceremonial guidelines," the officer explained with practiced patience. "There are medical professionals monitoring all personnel." "Then they're not doing their job properly," Dr. Ashbury countered, gesturing towards Sergeant Katarik. "Look at his coloring. His lips are blue and he's suppressing shivers that are clearly visible, even from here. Tradition shouldn't mean pneumonia." "I appreciate your concern, madam, but I must ask you to step back," the security officer insisted, his tone firming. "The ceremonial duties of the guard are not subject to public intervention." "I'm not the public. I'm a concerned British citizen and a historian who understands these traditions better than most," Dr. Ashbury replied, opening her umbrella wider. "Surely Queen Victoria wouldn't have expected her guards to stand unprotected in conditions that could cause lasting harm." The security officer's expression remained professionally neutral. "Ma'am, regardless of your credentials or intentions, approaching the guard is strictly prohibited. Please return to the public area immediately." A small crowd had begun to form despite the weather, opinions clearly divided. The atmosphere grew tense as the confrontation continued. "He's a person before he's a symbol," Dr. Ashbury insisted, her voice carrying to the gathered onlookers. "I have studied royal traditions for 20 years. They evolve for good reasons, not to cause harm to those who uphold them. The traditions have specific provisions, the officer countered, none of which include civilian intervention. The unexpected sound of car tires on wet gravel drew attention away from the standoff. A sleek burgundy Bentley bearing the royal standard had diverted from its scheduled route, forced to adjust due to extensive flooding near Kensington Gardens. As the vehicle came to a smooth stop, a palace aide hurried forward with a large black umbrella, opening it just as the rear door swung wide. The Duchess of Cambridge emerged first, her elegant cream coat a stark contrast to the gloomy day. She was followed closely by Princess Charlotte, whose bright yellow raincoat provided a rare splash of color against the day's monochromatic palette. Their unexpected presence immediately transformed the atmosphere, tension giving way to surprise and curiosity. "Look, Mommy," Charlotte said, her voice clear despite the rainfall. "That guard is standing in the rain without cover." The Duchess's hand rested gently on her daughter's shoulder as she surveyed the scene with composed awareness. Though her expression revealed nothing, the slight tightening of her lips suggested concern. "Yes, darling. The Queen's Guard maintains their post regardless of weather," she explained quietly. "It's part of their duty and tradition." Charlotte observed Sergeant Katarik with uncommon intensity for a child her age, noting details that many adults might miss. The way rainwater had soaked through his uniform collar, the slight tremor in his hands, the unnatural paleness of his face beneath his bearskin cap. "But he's absolutely drenched," Charlotte persisted, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Don't we have rules about taking care of the guards when the weather turns dangerous? I remember reading about it in my history lessons." The Duchess looked down at her daughter with surprising interest. "What do you recall exactly?" Charlotte's expression brightened. "Miss Winters taught us about Queen Victoria's proclamation during the Great Storm when the Thames flooded in 1861. I think Queen Victoria created a special protocol for guards during dangerous weather." A subtle smile of pride crossed the Duchess's features. "You've been paying attention to your royal history lessons." A palace official had approached with deferential haste. "Your Royal Highness, we didn't expect you. The flooding has affected your usual route." "Yes, Hammersmith is completely underwater," the Duchess confirmed before turning to the more immediate situation. "I see. There's some concern about Sergeant Katarik's condition in this weather." "A minor situation, Your Royal Highness," the official assured her. "A concerned citizen expressing worry about the guard's welfare." Charlotte had continued studying Sergeant Katarik, her young face growing increasingly troubled. "Mommy," she interrupted, "I think Queen Charlotte's rain provision should be implemented." Both adults turned to her in surprise. The palace official recovered first. "I beg your pardon, Your Royal Highness." "Not my provision," Charlotte clarified with slight exasperation. "Queen Charlotte's reign provision from 1795. It was named after her, but Queen Victoria formalized it. Miss Winters says it allows royal family members to acknowledge extraordinary service during dangerous weather conditions." The Duchess exchanged a meaningful glance with the palace official, whose expression had shifted from polite confusion to thoughtful consideration. "The royal weather consideration," he murmured in recognition. "It hasn't been implemented in some time, but the protocol does still exist." Charlotte turned to her mother, her expression simultaneously earnest and regal beyond her years. "May I, Mommy? The guard has been standing there for hours. Even his eyelashes have rain on them." The Duchess considered the request with appropriate gravity, her gaze moving between her daughter's determined face and the guard standing stoically in the downpour. After a moment of reflection, she nodded once, a decision reached. "Yes," she said simply. "I believe it would be appropriate in these circumstances." With permission granted, Princess Charlotte requested a distinctive navy blue umbrella with gold-trimmed edges and the royal crest embroidered prominently on each panel from the car. Unlike standard protection against the elements, this particular item carried historical significance beyond its practical purpose. The palace official stepped forward, recognition dawning in his eyes. "The royal weather consideration hasn't been implemented since the blizzard of 2010, he noted. "I'll need to inform the captain of the guard immediately." Dr. Ashbury, who had been watching this unexpected development with professional fascination, found herself involuntarily stepping closer. Her academic interest in royal traditions suddenly sparked by witnessing what she recognized as an extraordinarily rare ceremonial provision. "The royal weather consideration," she whispered to herself. "I've only read about it in historical documents." The palace official returned with a senior officer of the Queen's Guard. After a brief consultation with the Duchess, he turned toward Princess Charlotte with formal respect. "Your Royal Highness, the captain acknowledges and approves implementation of Queen Charlotte's reign provision," he announced with ceremonial gravity. "The protocol may proceed when you are ready." The palace official addressed the gathered observers. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness a rare royal tradition dating back to the reign of King George III. During the Great Storm of 1795, Queen Charlotte observed a guard standing faithfully at his post, despite dangerous conditions. Concerned for his welfare but respectful of duty, she established a protocol that would later be formalized by Queen Victoria during the Thames flooding of 1861. The royal weather consideration acknowledges extraordinary service during hazardous conditions. It permits specific accommodations without compromising the dignity and purpose of the guard's duty. While he spoke, Princess Charlotte received instruction from her mother, reviewing the precise ceremonial steps required. The special umbrella was positioned exactly as tradition dictated. Its orientation and angle matters of protocol rather than convenience. "The provision specifically states that only a royal family member may initiate the consideration," the official explained. "It represents the personal bond between the monarchy and those who stand guard, acknowledging that duty flows in both directions." Princess Charlotte moved forward with careful steps, the ceremonial umbrella held precisely at the angle prescribed by tradition. The captain of the guard preceded her by exactly 3 paces. When they reached the precise distance from Sergeant Katarik's post, the captain stopped and executed a formal quarter turn. "Sergeant Euan Katarik of Her Majesty's Royal Guard," he announced in clear tones. "Her Royal Highness, Princess Charlotte approaches with the royal weather consideration." Charlotte stepped forward with remarkable poise. "Sergeant Katarik," she addressed him in a clear voice that carried surprising authority. "In recognition of extraordinary service during adverse conditions, I present the royal weather consideration." She then performed a series of precise gestures that seemed ceremonial in nature, holding the umbrella with both hands, presenting it forward, with the royal crest perfectly centered, then executing a quarter turn of the handle. Charlotte completed the ceremonial presentation by taking one more precisely measured step forward. By authority granted through Queen Charlotte's reign provision of 1795 and Queen Victoria's formalization of 1861, your extraordinary service is acknowledged. The Crown recognizes duty fulfilled beyond measure. At these words, two junior officers moved into position on either side of Sergeant Katarik. One officer held a position marker, a brass emblem on a slender pole that would temporarily designate the exact position Katarik had maintained. The captain of the guard addressed Sergeant Katarik directly. "Sergeant, the royal weather consideration has been invoked. Acknowledge and proceed according to protocol." For the first time since taking his post hours earlier, Sergeant Katarik moved, not breaking position, but responding with precise ceremonial acknowledgement. His white-gloved hand executed a formal gesture that signified acceptance of the royal consideration. "The consideration is acknowledged with gratitude," he responded, his voice steady despite the cold. "Duty continues under royal acknowledgement." Dr. Ashbury watched in fascination. "It's remarkable," she whispered to her students. "The guard's duty isn't interrupted. It's formally acknowledged and accommodated. The position remains guarded through the marker while the guard's welfare is addressed." As Charlotte completed the ceremonial presentation, a subtle but significant change occurred in Sergeant Katarik's bearing. Not a relaxation of discipline, but a shift to a specific formal stance that acknowledged the implemented protocol. The position is maintained, the duty upheld, the guard respected, the captain announced, completing the formal implementation of the centuries-old tradition. As the ceremonial aspects concluded, practical provisions seamlessly followed. The umbrella with royal insignia remained positioned over Sergeant Katarik, held by a junior officer. Though shelter from the rain was now provided, Katarik maintained his vigilant watch, his discipline uncompromised. Princess Charlotte remained for a moment longer. "Are you feeling better now, Sergeant Katarik?" she asked. "Yes, Your Royal Highness," Katarik responded. "The Crown's consideration is deeply appreciated." The Duchess approached, standing beside her daughter with evident pride. "Sergeant Katarik, your dedication today has been exemplary." "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," he replied. "It's my honor to serve." The captain of the guard announced, "The royal weather consideration remains in effect for the duration of hazardous conditions. All guards will maintain position under modified protocol until standard conditions return." The palace official approached Dr. Ashbury. "The royal household appreciates genuine concern for our guards' welfare," he stated quietly. "Though there are established protocols for addressing such concerns." "I see that now," Dr. Ashbury acknowledged. "My academic understanding of these traditions clearly had gaps regarding practical implementation. Many of our oldest traditions include provisions for extraordinary circumstances," he explained. "They've survived centuries precisely because they can adapt while maintaining their essential purpose." As the royal party prepared to depart, Princess Charlotte approached Sergeant Katarik once more. "My history teacher says Queen Victoria was particularly concerned about guards standing in the rain because her own father became ill after reviewing troops in a storm." "Your Royal Highness has an impressive knowledge of royal history," Katarik responded, genuine respect evident beneath the formal address. "I find the practical reasons behind traditions most interesting," Charlotte replied with surprising insight. "Not just what we do, but why we do it." As the Duchess and Princess departed, Dr. Ashbury gathered her students. Today you've witnessed living history, she told them quietly. Not just the preservation of tradition for tradition's sake, but the purpose behind it. How meaningful traditions adapt while maintaining their essential dignity. So, the tradition actually did include provisions for extreme weather all along, asked a student. Yes, Dr. Ashbury replied. The true strength of enduring traditions isn't rigid inflexibility. It's thoughtful adaptation that preserves their essential purpose. Have you ever witnessed a tradition that perfectly balanced historical respect with practical common sense? Sergeant Katarik's dedication and Princess Charlotte's knowledgeable intervention show how the best traditions evolve while preserving their core purpose. What traditions do you think deserve preservation in today's world, and how might they adapt while maintaining their essence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you value dedication and respect like that shown by our Royal Guards, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories. Press the bell icon to never miss our daily Royal Guard stories. Share this video with someone who appreciates tradition with purpose, and check out our other Royal Guard stories appearing on your screen now. See you tomorrow at the same time with a brand new story.